Testing. All right. Hello, legends and super legends. Welcome to Veloharmony Live. Today we're talking about cycling in general, but specifically want to discuss the significance of average speed. You know, most cyclists that are, especially the ones that are new to the sport, they fixate on that. And I wanted to talk about why that's not a good metric or something to give a lot of thought to, because even the professionals don't focus on that. So we're getting ready for the weekend. Those of you who are going to be hooking up with different groups or just doing solo, you want to make sure that you check your bike this evening, get it ready, so you don't have any problems that would interfere with you when you're on the road. Now, like for the kind of rides I do, even when I competed, I would do the same thing. There's always the weekends are when you're going to ride longer. Most riders ride longer on the weekends. The top amateurs and the pros, they have at least one long ride in the middle of the week. But for most weekend warriors, Saturdays and Sundays are the days where they do 3 hours or more. So you need to focus on the efforts that you need to adapt to for your event, as opposed to focusing on how much you average for the whole ride. So those of you who follow like Chris Froome and some of the other riders that are on Strava, if you look at some of their long rides, their averages are pretty low. I mean, they're like 24 kilometers, like what Paul and I do, 24 and a half kilometers. What it doesn't tell you is that within that 6-7 hour ride, hey, Luke, within that 6-7 hour ride, what segments they did. And then sometimes they may do a segment that actually gets registered by Strava, and you can see that. It's the same thing with our rides. I don't carry Strava segments on my head unit. I don't care about it. But when I load the rides, it'll tell me that I'm third, or I've done this, or I'm a local legend, that kind of stuff. Something new they've added. But what ends up happening is within the ride, serious riders do, they have sections where they're doing intervals. It could be a 2-minute interval, it could be a 5-minute interval, it could be as long as a 20-minute interval. That's what matters, is that within that interval, they have a zone that they want to hit, and they do that, and then they rest. If they're riding with other riders, they may sit in after they've done their work. But overall, the average may be 25 kilometers for 7.5 hours. But you can't see that within that 20-minute segment, they may have been riding at 450 watts or something like that. You know, I'm using that as an example. So that's why average speed is not something you want to train to, because it's a moving target. You want to focus more on the event that's coming up. If you have an event where you need to be able to stay in a particular zone for a certain duration, then you have to build up your adaptability and your tolerance to stay in that zone. So that means, like, for example, if you're training for a time trial, you're not going to start out with, say it's a 40 kilometer time trial, 1 hour time trial. You're not going to start out at time trial pace for an hour. Hey, Paul, you're going to start out with maybe 2 minutes at a time or 3 kilometers at a time at very high intensities. And then you build your tolerance over time to where you can cover that duration. So that's what we do. That's why we'll leave, pick up Team RR or WCC, ride with them, then leave them because they stop too much. So we want to keep moving, and we leave them and then we go. And when we go, we might come to a section in the ride where we see a hill that we like, and we'll hammer that hill, you know, for a period of time, and then we'll take a break. So overall, we might average 23 kilometers an hour for the whole ride. But in between, we're hitting race pace. That's what matters. So don't worry about the overall. If you're that tied to it, you may want to just average like a lap segment when you do your efforts. I see Dwayne's here. We got JS. Welcome. So the key is that you can't train to speed, because speed is a result of your effort coupled with the terrain and the conditions. and it will never be the same. Even if, like when I competed, you have people doing time trials early in the morning, there might not be a whole lot of wind. And if you go in later in the afternoon, there's more wind, or it changes, especially like the big tours where they're riding all day long. They start in the morning and then they're riding all day long. So that means that the guys who are going in the evening are not going to have the same conditions as the person who went in the morning. All of that would change. That's another reason you can't train to speed. You train to effort. Whether you're using power meter, heart rate monitor, or feel, that's what matters. And most of the top riders, when they're giving it their all, they don't really want any feedback from any gadget, because it really doesn't matter. If you're going as fast as you can go, what does it matter what a power meter says? You can't put out any more. You know, so that's why the top guys, if they got to give it their all, I think there was a guy named Pajakar in the Tour de France last year. The reports were that he didn't have any feedback or anything on. He just rode. He ended up winning the tour, but he just rode as hard as he could. You know, and that's what matters for that ride. Okay, so he could have cared less what the overall average was on a particular stage, as opposed to if the last climb is his objective to win a stage. That's all he's going to be concerned about, is I've got to make sure that when I get to this part of the race, I can go as hard as possible. So when you're training, you need to focus on what's your event, what's your goal? Do I need to be able to hold a certain effort for a certain period of time? That's all that matters. Nobody cares if you can average 20 miles an hour for 6 hours. If you're not able to hit zone 4 or 5, you will still get dropped with all the kilometers in your legs. So you've got to focus on making sure you adapt to the ranges you need to be able to tolerate. Hey, Robert Tangler's here. John Hill. Welcome, John. So we're talking about average speed. Of course, anything else goes, but it's just something that I get a lot. You know, people go on Strava and they see our rides. They're like, that ride was kind of slow. Well, come on down and join us. We'll take you out. So, the thing is that we're not riding 7.5 hours at 40 kilometers an hour. It's just not possible, even in a pace line. There are laws. Those of you who have competed, or even if you do a Grand Fondo, there are laws. You go for a while and things kind of settle down. You see the same thing. So I don't really worry about it. It doesn't matter. Your body does not care about speed. Your body cares about how hard you worked and for how long. So if a hill comes and you let your ego get the better of you and you go too hard on that hill, you may not even be able to finish the hill if you're going too hard, harder than you've ever trained yourself to go. That's what's important. So you've got to learn your tolerances. That's more important than average speed. Know what you can do and for how long. And that applies to even the professionals. That's how they train. It doesn't matter whether you got a power meter or don't have a power meter, because if you go too hard, you got to pay the tax. And if you have not prepared your body to be able to tolerate that zone, you will not be able to finish that effort. And overall, you will slow down. So you keep that in mind as you're out there, and let other, and so a red herring is when people start talking about average speed, those experienced riders that hear that, they know immediately that this person is new or not in the know. That's a sure way to alert everybody that I'm new at this. When you start talking about average speed, it means nothing. You could be going downhill for miles and have a high average speed. What does that mean? If you were coasting or just rolling in a gear and not really working that hard, it means nothing. So that's how we know. And a lot of times I don't say anything. I just kind of smile because it doesn't really matter. And I've told the story that I read about Johan Museum, where some guy was on their ride with them. This is after he retired. Had power meter, heart rate monitor, all this stuff. And they came to a climb and he got popped. And so when they got to the cafe stop, Johan asked him, what was your power meter saying when you got dropped on that hill? And that was the joke. Doesn't mean anything. You can't do the work. That's what matters. So don't get hung up on the gadgets and the average speed or whatever. Focus on what you're capable of doing and for how long. That's why we train and don't ride. You have to be able to go hard for a period of time based on your event so that you're ready and you know what you're capable of doing, because having the adaptability is what matters. It doesn't matter if you're riding, let's say, 40 hours a week. And I'm using that just as an excessive amount of riding. If you're riding 40 hours a week and the other guy is riding 12 hours a week and he's focused and you're not hitting the same zones depending on what he's preparing for, it doesn't mean you're fitter than the guy who's riding 12 hours a week. So it's not how much you ride, it's what you do when you ride. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that. So, so for example, if we have guys in the area, I'm not going to name names, my brother knows. We have guys in the area that we ride with, and they come to the group and they broadcast that they're riding 500-600 miles a week. And I'm not talking about Jerry. Jerry does not do that. He just rides. That's what he does. But there are people who, because Jerry publishes all his rides on Strava, they want to compete with him. So they advertise, oh, I'm gonna beat Jerry. Jerry rode 500 miles last week. I'm gonna do 600 miles. That actually means nothing. You don't know what Jerry is doing for those 500 miles. You don't know how he's riding them. You guys have heard me say that. So don't try to do exactly what someone else is doing. What is more important is you finding out what your body needs, because we're all unique. Find out what kind of training you need. So when I started competing in cycling, I couldn't climb a lick. So I increased the number of hours that I was devoting to climbing, because I could sprint, but it didn't do me any good if I'm not there at the end. So you have to find out what do you need to work on to make you like an all-around rider. That's what's important. Then look at how many hours you have to devote to the sport. Don't just start riding a lot and then sacrifice the rest of your life, because it's better to have a well-rounded life than to just ride all the time and neglect other things. I mean, you're not even washing your cycling clothes because you're riding. I'm using that as an extreme example. You need to take care of business as well as ride, because that keeps, and that's another reason why some riders, and you guys have probably people in your groups that will complain about it, their significant other complaining about how much they're riding or whatever. If you're neglecting your other responsibilities, and it doesn't have to pertain necessarily to a job per se, but I'm talking about just around the house or whatever. If you're neglecting that because you're riding all the time, then what's the point? You're not going to have that much fun, and you create a lot of headache. And then the same thing is, Robert Tengler came on here the last time we did something. He said, we're doing the premiere. And he said the day after maintenance Monday. I mean, we ride a lot. As you all know, Saturday's our long day. So we dedicate that for Saturday. But Monday is a day where I rest most of the time. I've always done that because of how we cycle on the weekends. But that rest means I'm not riding. And so I get to check my tires, check my bike, make sure everything's working, so that the rest of the week and into the next weekend, I can train with no mechanical snafus. So if I were to ride Monday and then didn't check anything, at some point it would catch up with me. I'm using that as an example so you can see. So you don't need to be riding all the time. There's a tendency to think, oh, I'm getting fitter and I got to keep riding. No, sometimes you can do too much and then your performance drops or plateaus. It is important that you listen to yourself and that you document what you're doing and you review. Make sure you're getting enough recovery, because besides riding, rest is important. When we do that long ride on Saturday, I don't come home and go stand in line at Walmart or whatever else. I do all that stuff on other days so that Saturday I ride and I recover. Because on Sunday, I like to ride for a few hours to kind of just stay loose. And that's important that you plan that way. So everything comes from planning if you're going to succeed. Just like everything in life. You can't just wing it, You might get lucky, but then you won't really be able to replicate and reproduce what gets you ready for an event or what gets you enough rest when you're tired. That's important. All right, so let's see here. Dwayne says that John Hill says, is it a good idea to train by pace, meaning trying to hold a 4 minute mile, for example? Yeah, you can do that, John, but I think I wouldn't do it that way if you're outside, because why? You're doing time for a distance. So what if the next day you get a lot of wind? And let's assume you're using like the same course. You get a lot of wind. It's the same thing when you're running. If the conditions change, you may have to do less time at that same effort because the wind's blowing in your face. Or if it's behind you, you'll cover it faster. So that's another moving target. So it's actually better to focus on your effort. So with the advent of heart rate monitors, if you watch people that are running, they use heart rate monitors. The reason why the effort of your body is more reliable, whether you're tracking heart rate or power, watts, is because if it's a windy day or a wind-aided day, the power is the same or the effort is the same. So then you will really be able to track your improvement. Otherwise, it's a moving target. You might come one day where it's a fair day and you have a good time on that mile. Then the next day the wind's pounding you. So it will take you longer because you really cannot exponentially increase the effort. That's what it would take. So no, I wouldn't. It would be hard to do it that way. You want something that's objective and something that focuses on what your body is doing, not the conditions. Because the conditions would dictate the time it takes you to cover. That's why it's important to focus on what you're doing. You know, the same thing when we ride the bike. You're going up the hill, you have to do like more watts to hold that speed or slightly lower than on a flat road. And so what happens is it takes so much more effort to get more speed on a flat road. Like when I would do a time trial, I would go hardest on the uphills and then save a little bit on the downhills because I made up more time on the uphills. Because it takes so much more effort to get a little bit of increase in speed when you're riding solo. Now, if you're in the group and you're in the draft, that's a different factor because you've got help from drafting. So you want to do it as much as possible in situations where you can reproduce the conditions. So for example, if it's an indoor track, then yeah, you can do that pace where you're doing a 4 minute mile because you're indoors. The wind's not going to change. And hopefully the temperature settings in the dome or wherever you are won't change. So in those situations, you can do that. But when you're outside and dealing with nature, then the variables kick in. Rex Maverick says the only time I need to see speed is for descending. I need to know if I can carry that speed in the descending. You don't need to see speed for descending. You should be able to feel it. You should be able to feel your bike. That's what we talk about, the bike fitting you. The bike should be an extension of your body. I don't look at speed. I can tell when my back tire starts getting sketchy and I need to shave off some speed before I take a corner. You should be doing it by feel, not looking at speed. The number doesn't mean anything. Because by the time you find out you're out of control, you're looking at numbers. No, you should be reacting to what you feel the bike doing. You should know where the tires are. That's what we talk about. That's why I made that video about the Rene Hurst tires and the tire pressure settings that we use. You should be able to feel what your tire is doing, not only when you're descending, all the time. So the tire pressure we use, all of that is a factor in how our bike feels when we ride. So I can tell if I hit a patch of gravel, whether that tire is about to go out on me, then I unclip my foot. You should be able to know that. Don't be looking at speed. Feel what that bike is doing. It should be an extension of your body. If it's not, then get a fit. You're welcome, John. Fun Forever. Hi from Bristol, England. Do you study the wind direction when you plan your ride? No, I don't. I don't. I wouldn't say study. I shouldn't say I don't. Maybe I would say yes and no. It's always good to know where the wind is blowing from, but it's not because I'm concerned about how fast I'm going to go or whatever. I want to know where the wind is coming from because, especially this time of year, and you guys are in England, so it's cool there too. When it's cold, if it's 10 Celsius, which is 50 Fahrenheit, and the wind is blowing from the north, I know to dress warmer because that's not going to feel like 10 Celsius around here. And you guys are in England, you probably you have coastal areas nearby too. We have damp cold here. So if it's windy and it's 10 Celsius, I dress warmer because if it's coming from the north, that means it's going to feel like 7 Celsius, thereabouts. If it's blowing from the south, that means it's going to be warmer so I can dress for 10C. I hope that makes sense. Now, as far as the route, if we know the wind is coming from the north, we are not going to try to replicate our speed going north into that wind on a 7-hour ride. We will accept the fact that we have to go slower for the first few hours because we're going into the wind, and where we go is uphill. So we don't try to kill ourselves and fight this 800-pound gorilla because you can't win against the wind. You know, we try to make sure that we dose out the effort the same way so that when we're coming back, we'll have enough left to where we can take advantage of the wind being behind, and we're simply going to ride larger gears coming back and smaller ratios going into the wind. That's the way you have to look at it. You're not ever going to win the battle with the wind. So I use the wind to know how to dress. Because in the summer here, we have one direction, mostly southeast. It comes from the Gulf and it comes from the East Coast. So the wind is warm and it stays hot. So we know that coming back, the wind's going to be in our face. And in fact, we welcome it because it's so hot around here and humid. We want that wind. So yeah, I use the wind to make a decision on how to dress. That's important. So I wouldn't say I study it. I just want to get the direction. I don't concern myself too much with trying to overanalyze. The wind's always out there. It's either across, in your face, or behind. It's always out there, especially on stretches that are exposed. Don't spend too much time being concerned about the wind. Focus more on the fact that whatever effort you choose to do, you're using an optimal ratio in your gears so you don't wear out your legs prematurely for however long you plan on riding. That's what's more important. We get that a lot around here where we'll start out a ride early on and these guys are trying to hold 33, 35 kilometers going into the wind, and then 12 minutes into the ride, they've got to bail because they're blown, you know. It's not easy, especially if you're going uphill. So we don't do that. And then if you're in the wind and you're in the group, take shorter poles. A lot of groups will start rotating pace lines sometimes. So everybody gets short poles in the wind and roll back in. You've seen us do that a while back with Mo's group. You have to change the way you ride based on the conditions. And that's what groups do. So sometimes you get an echelon if the wind's from the side. So not everybody's fighting the wind the whole time. That's the most you want to get out of the wind. You want to know where it's coming from, but really, other than dressing properly, once you get out there, the wind's going to shift. Because as you turn, it's going to shift. And your job is to find out where the draft is when you're following people. You always have to be searching for that draft. It's never constant. All right, let's see here. Colin Delaney says, I used to always focus too much on keeping my speed up 30 kilometers plus, but now I keep myself endurance pace, not caring about speed, but go hard, strategic, much more enjoyable ride. Yeah, that's the way the pros ride. If you look at, I don't know, I don't follow a lot of them, but if you follow any of the pros, the rides that they do post, especially in the off season, when they're riding alone, they're doing about 26, 27K for an average, but in between, they have sections where they're heating things up based on what the objective was for that ride. They don't ride 7 hours at one pace. And we don't do this. That would be too boring. So yeah, don't worry about that. What you want to focus on is, what is the objective for that ride? Before you leave home, you should have an objective. If the objective is endurance pace, that's your average. You want to average your endurance pace. So it doesn't mean you're going to stay in endurance pace the whole ride. It means you're going to be below or above it from time to time, but the objective is to average your endurance pace. So that you come to a climb and you're feeling good, give it a stick, hit another zone, work on whatever, sit back down. And then if you're with your mates and you want to chat for a while, fine. Don't ruin the ride by feeling like you're a metronome. By riding consistently, especially to a plan, when it's time to go fast, you guys see us. We average 23K, maybe 24K, 22K. But when it's time to go fast, we can go fast. And in fact, it's more fun because we're not always killing ourselves. But on our ride, there are sections where we give it a stick. And those are the clips we try to film for you guys, even when we're by ourselves, as well as with the group. But sometimes these guys stop too much. So a lot of times, I like to film the groups so I can talk about the different things they do that you may not want to copy or things that you can copy. And I also like to film Paul and I to show you, on this stretch we're going to go. I said, let's do some clips for the guys. So you all can see that overall, yeah, we average 23K, but in this section, we're doing 33, 35K, 37K, whatever, even just the two of us. And that's the way you want to train. You want to have a focus, you want to have a goal, and you want to do drills. You want to work on leg speed, leg strength. There are a lot of different things. And people would always ask me these questions. That's why I built those training plans, just put them on the website. Now people can just download them and go off and train. So it really freed me up to be able to do these live streams. It was Paul that told me, he said, build it and they will come, because I would get all these questions and I would ask him. I said, people are asking this on the channel. And he would give me an idea, well, if you build something like this, then they can just download whatever. That's the reason I set up all those things, because I get these questions a lot. And that's why I like to do these live streams now, because I don't have to spend a lot of time going into details. People can go get their plans if they want. So yeah, so it's more fun, Colin. You're correct. Colin's one of our channel members, of course. We appreciate your support, Colin. Shani D, hello from Augusta, Georgia. Well, hello. Hello, Purple, Georgia. Mike Narayan, question. Would you ride with Donald Trump? I didn't know he rode bikes. I ride with anybody. Let's see, Dwayne Randall. I focus more on my average cadences during my rides, no matter what the actual speed. Well, good for you. I don't really worry about average cadence. I ride for the cadence I need for the moment in the ride. If I need to accelerate, then I'm going to rev it up. If I need to cruise, then I let the cadence fall where it may. I don't focus on what my cadence averages out. I like to be able to do it all. I want to be able to do 50 RPMs if I'm working my legs or whatever drill I'm doing. And I want to be able to do 150 if I need to, even sprint or something, catch somebody on a flat road. All right, let's see. Better than your average. I'm a new cyclist, and I always watch speed. Okay, but from watching you and from my experience weight training, I realized that every workout time on the bike is different, so I'll focus on effort and feel. Yeah, you're a new cyclist. The biggest thing is you have to know how to blend your rides. So you have to have like a recipe. If you're baking a cake and you've never made a cake, you need a recipe so the cake comes out. I'll use that as an analogy. So I always said, if you just go out and ride, yeah, you'll improve. But you're not going to be able to nail down when you're going to be ready for your event. That's why the pros have coaches. I was fortunate to have coaches and so forth. So you need some kind of plan. Whether you don't have a coach or not, get a training plan that you follow so that you can go to your event and back up from the event with specific workouts that will get you there on time. So you're not guessing. That's why when we're riding and somebody comes in a path or whatever, I could care less. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So if I'm riding and this is the section where I feel like I want to play, you guys see us with Team RR, yeah, I might go along when they make a move or whatever. But overall, I've said it before, there is no point in me sprinting against somebody who I know I can beat. That does not make me better. What's the point in that? If you know you're faster than that person, don't sprint against that person. Find the guy who beat you and sprint against him. And he's going to be looking for someone who's faster than him to sprint against them. That's what matters. So you see somebody you can beat, and then they sprint. What's the point of you sprinting knowing that when you get there, you can they're not going to be competitive with you. So there's no point. Once you figure that out, the next time that person sprints, don't bother. You're not going to learn. They can't teach you anything. You know, now if the person is a good climber and they're light and they can put out watts per kilo, so the next time they go on a climb and you want to improve your climbing, then you go with them. So they can stretch you. That's what you're looking for. You know. And that's why it's not just me. A lot of riders that are in the know, that's what they do. There's no point to it. You guys see Mo, sometimes he'll come ride and just sit in the back. Because he'll tell us, I'm rested. Now, he's not saying that, oh, you guys are slow, so I'm coming here to rest. No, what he's saying is, I'm not pulling today. And he doesn't say that, but you can tell. He will sit in and just keep his effort minimal. And that's the way you need to do too. You can ride with certain people or certain groups knowing that today is a day where you're supposed to take it easy because maybe you got a big ride coming the next day. You just wanted to loosen up. You don't even need to make an announcement. You just sit in the back. Don't take any pulls. If they go too fast and you start exceeding the zones that your cap zone, you let them go. And you stay in, but at least you got to chat and visit for a little bit. And that's why I've said a bunch of times, don't pat yourself on the back if somebody drops off the pace. Everybody's got a different reason why that's happening. That has no bearing on your fitness. You need to focus on you and the zone that you're able to tolerate. That's how you track your improvement, not based on someone else. Because even at a paid for race, people are doing different things. All right, let's see here. These guys are chatting about Augusta, Georgia. Georgia is a beautiful state. I spent some time in Marietta, Georgia, visiting a long time ago. I had family there, and it's just beautiful. I drove through Atlanta and some of the other suburbs, Buckhead, and I noticed a lot of the streets had like peach. There's a lot of streets named after peach. You know, there's so many of them. You know, I got a little turned around, had to look things up. You know. So Georgia's a beautiful place. They got beautiful roads. They got a lot of nice rollers. I didn't go where there were any kind of hills. I don't know if they got mountains there, but they've got nice climbs and beautiful, beautiful roads. You know. Carlos wants to know if I can share my experience with Velo. I haven't used the Velo Flex tire. I bought one, but it's sitting in the toolbox. They're not for everyday training. Velo Flex, the one I have, that's what you're talking about. They're sew-ups. So they're not for everyday use. They're not for training per se. They're quality tires for your important rides. So Velo Flex makes a lot of lightweight tires, very easy to carry. They're very foldable. But I would say they're probably at the same level as Victoria. You know, I'm sure they're all in the same range, but they're very pricey tires. So you want to get them, you got to look for the sales. Veloflex they're Italian made, and they're supposedly they're handmade, but they're good quality tubulars because not all tubulars are created equal. When you get into tubulars, you have to be careful because some of them can be quite lumpy, especially if you don't install them properly. Especially near the valve area, you got to make sure that it seats on the rim, so you don't have a high spot, you know. But Veloflex makes good tires. If you're getting them, make sure you're getting them for competition or Grand Fondo, stuff like that. I wouldn't get them to train. If you're going to train on tubular tires, then you might want to look at the Continental Sprint tire. They're not as pricey. That's a real good tire. I don't like the narrow tubular tires. I like something that's 23 or larger. You know, but some of them are very narrow. I don't like narrow tires. I like to have a lot of rubber on the road. I'm a big guy. I want rubber on the pavement. Good morning, Melanin. Melanin in Asia. Asia is a very big continent. You know, you might as well say melanin on Earth. Melanin in Asia. That's a cool name, cool moniker. Yeah, Veloflex makes good tires, but shop and get them when they're on sale. They're priced high up there because of the quality that they put in them. But Veloflex, Victoria, they're pretty good. The Continental competition tires. I actually have that on my Kish bike. I like that tire because it not only does it ride well, it holds air really, really long because they use butyl tubes in it. They did not use latex. I don't believe that it sacrificed the feel of the ride because they ride really well. I like that I don't have to air them up often as the other ones, because that's the thing with these tubular tires. I think I talked about it on one video where I have the Continental Sprint tire and I've already put sealant in the rear tire because things work their way in. Hey, Cycle's here. Things work their way in, and I had to pull out something out of the tire, like a staple or something had worked its way in, and I pulled it out with a tweezer, and the sealant immediately filled it before the tire was completely. And I did it at home, and so the sealant really works. I use stands, no tubes, it's called, and they work really well. So I just used like maybe a few ounces of it a long time ago, and it's just been working. You still have to check your tires because the Continental Sprint tire that I talked about that I use for training, it's a chili compound, soft rubber. So especially in the wet, even a small stone that's sharp enough can work its way in. So you got to make sure you check your tires. And not just tubulars, all your tires, check them. I check my tires often. So I don't have punctures very frequently. Because believe it or not, a lot of your punctures are delayed. You might get something in the tire on Thursday, and it sits there and it works its way in. And then on Saturday's ride, it gets to the tube. So you got to inspect your tires and use tweezers and get those things out of there early. You can catch a lot of that. And even some of the tubes now, you can use sealant in them because a lot of them have removable valve cores. Because that's the requirement, so you can get the sealant in there. So a lot of them will seal. Because a lot of the Continental tubes, particularly most of the ones I have, you can unscrew the valve core. That's really cool. It's good to have, So it's kind of the reason I do that is when I get up on Saturday, my goal is to ride, not to work on bikes. So maintenance Monday, take care of that. And if it flows into maintenance Wednesday night, you got to do what you got to do. Because sometimes you can't solve everything on Monday. So keep that in mind. But by doing it that way, you won't have surprises on the road. I'd much rather mess with stuff in the shop than to go out on the road and have to do something out there. So, you want to do that. So primarily focus more on making sure your bike fits you, your kit, get quality kit that fits you. Because stuff flapping in the wind, you guys see it. If you watched last video, I didn't comment about it because I've talked about it enough. There were people in the group that were flapping around, and if you looked at Paul and I, nothing moving. Anything moving with the wind, that's drag. So you got to get stuff that fits you. It doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to be sized correctly. I don't know what was going on. I tried to get something from Rafa, and they kept refusing the processing of the payment. So I called them, and it seems like their customer service is kind of lackluster. And I'll use that word because I'm not really sure what's going on. They used to have really top-notch customer service, and all of a sudden, I guess, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's growing pains or whatever. But, depending on who you get on the phone, you can tell when someone's really trying to help you as opposed to feeling like you're disturbing them. The guy acted like he was at home watching a movie and I called him. So I politely asked for him to get me someone else. And he did. So I don't know. Maybe I just got a bad one, but he really didn't want to look into the problem. It had something to do with the shopping cart. A lot of times Paul and I do that a lot. We'll have things on a wish list that we're trying to track, to see if it goes on sale or whatever. I guess I had too many baskets in different browsers or whatever, And the thing is that I close all the browsers every session, so I don't know what happened was on their end. Because I told them I see the one item I have in there. He's telling me there are other things in there, but would not tell me what the solution was. I'm like, okay, since I'm not in your system to fix it for you, what's your plan? That was my question to him. Anyway, to make a long story short, I got somebody else who resolved the issue. I was trying to get something to keep my shoes drier because in fact, tomorrow we're expecting 50% chance of rain. I think that's what it said. Let me see what the weather. This is the gentleman that asked about wind. I spend more time looking at what the weather says is going to do and when. When is the rain coming, how long, and all kind of stuff. So now they've changed it. Even though it says Saturday 50%, it still says 50%. Now it says 60%. But my biggest thing is that now it says the rain is 40% at noon and then 60% at 1. Well, we're still out there. By 1 o'clock, we're wrapping up our ride. So that's why I love these things. I love this software. Every time I come across something like this, I always say, sometimes quietly, I say, thank you, Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was introducing the iPhone, the 3G, people thought he was nuts. And it's great being able to just access this stuff. I know a lot of people take it for granted, but I know what it was like before these smartphones were prevalent. And so it's nice seeing that at noon is 40%. So I know now that there's a 40% chance. So I'm going to put on my mud guards on the bike. I don't care if it comes or doesn't come because I don't want to get dirt. Because I have to spend a lot of time cleaning that orange jersey from last week. The orange jersey, the dirt from the tire, the spray, because it wasn't even supposed to rain, just the dampness. But it was hard. I cleaned it by hand to make sure I got all the grit out. You can't depend on the washing machine. So I hand washed it. To avoid all of that, and then to clean up when we don't have the mud guards. So I will be putting the mud guards on the bike because by 2 p.m. it says 60%, 1 p.m. 60%, noon 40%. And then it's going to be overcast. So I use that to know what kind of kit to wear. Overcast, kit to wear. As far as the wind tomorrow, see, this thing does not give me wind. I mean, you can go, I think Yahoo Weather may give wind. I just go outside for the most part. In the morning, I always take a little stroll. I get up a little early, take a little stroll out in the courtyard to see what the weather's doing, see what the temperature feels like. Kind of like I test the outfit, because sometimes it's hard to really get it perfectly. But that will let me know, am I dressed too warm? Because temperature-wise, it's supposed to be, let's see, at 6 a.m., it's going to be 16 Celsius, about 57 Fahrenheit. And so then I look at the range. By the time we're done, it's going to be 20 Celsius. So 50, let's say 15 to 20. That's a 5-degree swing. That's not that much. So I step outside now to see, is it a warm 15? Is it humid 15 or is it dry? Because if it's dry, I know that where we're going is going to feel colder than where I am because we're going north. And in the forest with the trees, it feels colder. Even in the summer, you can tell the difference. That's what I use the weather for. So you try to get as close as you can. You're never going to get it perfect, but I don't want to be out there and be uncomfortable. So I much rather have a little more if it's going to be real cold. I'll definitely double up on the glove. But tomorrow with 15 Celsius, just a regular long fingered glove will be enough. That's what I use the weather for to help me decide. And so I used to do these prologues where I would talk about what I was wearing. I stopped doing it after I made a video that explained how you can gauge to, decide what to wear because it's going to change every day. Depending on where you are in the world, what the wind is doing, what your temperature, feels like. If you're somewhere very humid, and the air is pumping from the south, then you're not going to be dressing as warm. So you've got to play around with it. Plus, we're all different. What I wear, it's going to be different for you in the same situation. So people have requested, I kind of missed that. There's no point to that because what I wear is just for me. Because even Paul wears different stuff and we're all here together because he runs colder than I do. So just keep that in mind. But it's important. Even the pros spend a lot of time. You see the races where they'll ride back to the team car, drop off a jacket, and all of a sudden then they'll come back to get one or have another teammate go get it. The reason being is If you're not optimal temperature-wise, you waste energy that you could use to ride to keep your body optimal. So those guys don't shy away from putting on and taking off. They get too hot and shedding stuff, you know. Let's see here. Simonson said, "I'm late. Greetings from British Columbia." Welcome, welcome. We got 15 minutes left. Let's see. Rex said, "I finally got a trainer and I haven't been outside since." I feel for you, man. I can't spend that much time on trainers. It rains every day and my bike looks like I did a cyclocross. That's with fenders on. You have to watch the bike, you know, because what happens is even with the fenders on, you have splatter. So if you're riding and there's mud on the road and you go through, that's going to get on your, you know, your stays and so forth. For the fenders that we use, they're not full fenders. So you've got fenders that cover the rear of the tire, so they don't. We get no spray, no rooster tail. Great. But the other part of the tire that's behind the seat tube is open. So you're going to get spray from there on the seat tube and on the stay and on the front derailleur. It's a trade-off because the bikes we have were not designed to take full fenders. There's no clearance under the fork for that. That's fine. I prefer to keep myself clean, keep my feet dry by using the fenders in the front. That's also just in the back. It doesn't go past the fork in front. That's what a full fender would be like. So some bikes that are designed like, we don't get that much rain here where we're in Southeast Texas. We have maybe 300 days of rain. So overall, we got about 60, let's say 60 days of rain maybe. So to get a full rain bike would be overkill. People who live in Seattle, Portland, and places that it rains a lot, those bikes are common. Everybody's got full fenders and they're covered. And even then, you got to watch the bike. Same thing with your car. You know, you get splatter on the doors and whatever, even though you got fender wells or you got, you know, mud flaps and all that. So yeah, you got to wash your bike. I like my bike clean. So I don't, you know, doesn't take any time to get a damp rag and just wipe the tubes and get that off. So if I have successive days of rain, I still clean my drivetrain because the chain gets a lot of grit on it. There's a lot of sand. You can hear it. And so I clean that at a minimum if I'm going to ride again. And I may ride without wiping the tubes or whatever. But what I like about having the fenders is that my saddle underneath is not full of grit. My back is not wet. My rear is not wet, because being wet and soggy on the bike is a pain. And it ruins your saddle. You know how the leather gets on the saddle? It gets all scuffed up when it's wet. You kind of rub away that shine. We still get that from time to time, but it cuts all of that out. And it's just so much more enjoyable, you know. And that's the reason I will not ride without fenders unless I get caught out in it, like last week when the weather just changed versus the forecast. Keeping your bike clean and keeping your bike maintained heads off problems, because sometimes while you're cleaning the bike, you can see issues and then you resolve it. You know, that's just the proper thing to do. You know, and I think that it just shows that you care about your machine. This machine is taking us 160 kilometers round trip, so 80 kilometers one way from home. That's about 50 miles. So I've got to make sure I stay on top of it, because that's my mobility. You know, I don't want to get stuck out there and be surprised. You know, so don't put off keeping your bike in good condition, because your goal should be, I've got blah amount of hours to ride. I want to spend all of it riding, not repairing the bike or fiddling with it on the side of the road. You do that at home. So when it's time to ride, you're ready to ride. That's what every rider in the know does. And that's the reason they do that, because they don't want to be stuck out on the road without the means to get back. And you're not carrying the same kind of tools that you have at home. So why not just keep up with stuff? The bike does not need to be maintained that much, other than cleaning the chain, lubing the chain, and just checking to make sure that wear items are replaced timely. Other than that, for the most part, if you do that, you'll be able to ride more. A lot of the guys that ride lots, I'm sure they're maintaining their bike. Otherwise, they won't be able to ride lots because it will break down if you don't take care of it. You know, if you don't replace your chain timely, what ends up happening is your chain rings become shark tooth looking. Your sprockets in the rear, same thing, and it's more expensive to replace chain rings and sprockets than it is a $35 or $50 chain, depending on what you have. So the chain is a wear item. You keep up with that, you will have a long life in your sprockets and your chain rings. That's just what makes sense. Same thing with your car. You don't change the oil. It's expensive replacing an engine. Oil changes are cheap. We got coupons for them. So it's the same thing. It's just a little bit of time. It's not much. If you can't do it yourself, drop it off at a shop. Support your LBS. They'll keep it because use Monday for that or whatever. Call ahead of time to make sure your bike's ready for the next ride. That's what I do. If it's a problem I find on the road, as soon as I get home, once I've recovered, I go right there and resolve it. So the next time I want to ride, my bike's ready to be used. All right, let's see here. Shani says, I'm trying to get into doing whatever maintenance I can. I need a work stand. Yes, having a work stand is definitely recommended because I cannot stress how nice it is to not only have the bike at a height where you can stand and work on it, but also you can troubleshoot. You can turn the pedals and make sure your shifting's working, nothing's rubbing, all of that. Working with the bike on the ground, it's harder. So yes, get a work stand. They're always on sale. Now, if you're trying to get a work stand shop quality, they're going to be real pricey. The blue guys, Park Tool, they're pricey, but they make really good stuff. There is a stand that I use. You guys see in the video. It's made by they changed their name. Originally, I bought it from another company, but they were bought out by the company called Feedback Sports. I like their stand because it has a compression button that you can just tap, and the clamp opens. Put the bike in, and you ratchet on there, and then tighten a few turns, and it's holding the bike, and you can flip the bike literally 360 as you're working on it if you need to. Very easy to use, very lightweight, and it's foldable. So if you want to take it to an event or whatever, very good stand. I like this so much over the years. I've accumulated. I got two of them. I have one in the garage, and I have one in the studio that you guys see. They work really well. They make different levels of it. They got the pro level that I described, and they've got another one step down that's just as good that you can get. But yeah, a stand takes the pain out of working on your bike. As soon as you get home, you put on the stand, you can clean your chain right there because you can adjust the height of the bike as you deem it necessary. I adjust mine to where when the pedal is down, my arm extended down reaches the pedal naturally. So I can just turn it, and it's just easy to work. It's easy to clean your chain and so forth. I've had it for years, and it just works. And they sell the little parts for the stand. So if something breaks or whatever, they supply you the parts. You don't need to throw your stand away. I like that about that. But definitely look into that. A stand and definitely a trainer, and then spare wheels. You need at least 2 sets of wheels. You have one to train on the trainer, or one for training, and one for your events at a minimum. And then over time, you can get more wheels, go on eBay and shop and get some extra. It's good to have extra wheels. Just in case something happens, you break a spoke or whatever, you can still ride while it's being worked on, because things happen. Russell says he's changing a flat right now. Make sure you find out what caused the flat, Russell. Looking at tire, make sure it's not still there. Okay, because a lot of these things, they don't always pop and fall off. They're sitting there. And some of them, like I explained earlier, will be sitting in there for days and you didn't check it. And on a ride, it finally reached the tube. So it's still embedded in there. You got to go and look in that spot. So what I usually do is before I remove the tube, I look at where the valve is on the tube. I find where the puncture is. And then you can go back to the tire and try to find that spot and see what caused that puncture. And if nothing's there, then you're good to go. But always check for that, because that's how you end up using up your tubes if you don't check. There's always something in there. Let's see here. Yeah, Shanny says, yeah, feedback has good their stand. I got their stand a long time ago. That some other company had it, like I said earlier, and then they took over, but it's still produced. They really got good stuff. They've got a lot of stuff. You can go crazy. I also got if you see the videos where my bikes are on the wall, I did not want to physically attach anything to the room, So they have a stand that ratchets to the ceiling, and you just compress it and lock it so it stands in place, and then you got the arms to hold the bikes high. I put those two bikes up against the wall. It's a nice stand. It's out of the way. I don't like things that have feet on the ground that extend out, that take up too much room. So that was nice. I got that from feedback also. They have some neat stuff. They have like trainers and different things. They have some trainers you can use for events, like lightweight trainers and all that. I don't own any of those because I have my Super Magneto Pro. I've had the Super Magneto Pro for years. I don't remember when I bought it, but it's at least 4 or 5 years old, and it still works. And it's not a smart trainer per se. I just put my bike on it and I ride. I don't hook it up to anything. And I only use the trainer when I can't go out because of scheduling, and not so much weather, because weather doesn't stop me, but I'm not going to dress up to do a 1 hour ride in the rain. So I just get on the trainer. There's no point to that. Put on all that crap. But for the weekends, for Saturday, unless it's lightning, we're out there. Because it doesn't rain the entire time. And even if it does, we're dry. And maybe I'll make a video later about how we stay completely dry. Our hands, we have waterproof gloves. We're not wet at all. And then with the mud guards, yeah. The bikes get a little dirty, like the areas I described, but other than that, we're fine, we're dry. So we enjoy being out in the rain. It's the rest of the people who don't plan for the rain. Just imagine trying to spend 5, 6, 7 hours with a wet pad on your pants from the rear spray. That's why people don't like riding in the rain. That is no way that's fun. And that messes up your saddle too. The pants get dirty. Just that stuff we did last week, getting caught out in the mist and damp roads in the woodlands. Enough of a mess. And yeah, so if you're dressed for it, you can ride in any kind of wear. And they have waterproof gloves. They have the shoe covers for rain. They're all out there, So yeah, no excuses. If you really want to ride, you can't let the weather stop you. And I'd much rather go out and ride in the rain for 7 hours than to do a 30-minute or 1 hour ride on a trainer. That's so much more fun. Plus, riding in the rain on the roads are clear. Drivers don't even want to be out there. It's just different. It's nice. So let's see here. Jose Josu, Josu de Paz. He said trainer versus rollers. I've done both. I own a trainer now. I don't have a roller anymore, but I've done that. Rollers are really good if you want to work on your pedaling being smooth, and then it helps with your balance. Okay, you can't be reading a book on rollers, and rollers, I think, will give you a better workout because you have to balance and you have to keep pedaling. You can't coast, within reason, but it feels closest to the road. Now, the trainers the technology has come to where they feel like being on the road, but you are fixed, you're attached. You don't have that movement that you have on rollers. So it all depends on what you want. A lot of riders that do track events, they have rollers. You'll see them warming up on rollers. If you want to practice, yeah, that's fine. I've done both. It's good to know how to ride on rollers. I think it's cool, but for me, I prefer the trainer because I can get a more intense workout in a short period of time on the trainer than on rollers. The rollers require more attention. You can't watch your favorite program while you do the rollers. It's like being kind of on the road. You've got to pay attention, otherwise you can fall off the rollers and crash in your own house. So a lot of people put the rollers between a doorway or something, so they have something, especially when they're just starting. So Shani says, cycling has been costly. I started in 2019, but it's been so much fun, very rewarding. Okay, it's cheaper than doctors, and it's a lot more fun. So do your shopping, Sandy. Make a list of what you need and then shop, and it balances out. You're way ahead. than trying to pay doctors and have them do tests and all this stuff. Cycling will keep the doctors unemployed. All right, let's see here. John wants to know how's the result going with the new lube. I'm not sure what new lube you're talking about. I've got the wax lube. I think it's the one from that I've got from what's his name, Chris Horner's video that I decided to try. It worked fine. You know, if you want to do a wax lube, just make sure you clean the chain. I like keeping my chain clean. I hate a dirty drivetrain. They all work. All of them are good. The gold lube, and they're all on my website. The recommended cycling products. If you just scroll down, you'll see the lube, or just search on the page for lubricants. They're there. All of them are pretty good. Just find the one you want to try and go with it. All of them are very light, and just apply them properly. Russell says, I've been riding my gravel bike lately. Put air in the road bike tires last night. Rear was flat this morning. Okay, yeah, maybe you already had something in there, or maybe the valve. I don't know. Just have to go at it and see. If it's flat, something's up. It's not an accident. Shanny says, this girl doesn't do rain. My hair doesn't appreciate it. Well, you can see I don't have that problem, Shanny. But I'm sure you could cover your hair with a shower cap or something like this. I don't know if you want to wear a swim cap because it probably doesn't breathe. Yeah, you girls in your hair, I guess that would be a problem. I get that from my wife a lot. The problem with my wife, her hair, depending on what style she's doing, it won't fit in the helmet. And so we got to try to work it through the back. You know, they'll do like a ponytail and all that. See, with my head, the helmet fits all the time. Guys don't have to worry about that. We cut our hair a certain way and just the helmet remembers. For people on a tight budget, Iberia sells a cheap utility stand. Yeah, you know, this is the thing. I'm glad I read that. I don't know, the word cheap kind of irks me. I would say probably inexpensive or low price or something. Cheap is scary for me. Cheap, I'm seeing that it's going to give me headaches. I don't want to buy anything I can't use a lot and then it breaks. Then I'm out money. So I'd much rather take that money I would have bought the cheap stuff with, save up, and get one thing that's going to last and be done. I just said I've had a trainer for like 4 or 5 years. I don't even remember when I bought it. It's been that long. I'd much rather spend, I think I spent almost $400 when I bought it years ago. Now it's probably $200 or less, the Super Magneto Pro. Buy something that's reliable. So he may not have meant that with the word cheap, but buy something that's reliable so you spend the money once and you're done. Because you keep buying cheap stuff, you'll buy a lot of cheap stuff because they break. They may break. I don't know. So do your research with what he's talking about. You know, do your research when you buy stuff. Read the reviews from people who actually used the product, not the marketing guys. Because that way you spend your money once, your hard-earned money once, and you got a product that will last you for a while. That's the way I like to roll. And then you take the rest of your money to get other stuff or nothing at all, instead of keep buying stuff because you're saving money. Because you don't end up saving if they break on you. All right. Let's see here. I should have bought the trainer right after the bike. Fantastic training. I have a traditional trainer and had to just upgrade to a smart one due to noise. I do not mind the rain. It is the cleanup. Yeah, for most people, it is the cleanup. So you got to clean the bike anyway. So for me, I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind because with what we put on our bikes, our cleanup is minimal. Just the stains. That's it. So we don't have spray under the saddle and all of that, and you get supposedly with the guys that want to look cool, I guess. But you know, and this is what's funny because growing up, all the bikes had mud guards on them. I don't know when they stopped putting them on there, but the racers never had mud guards because their goal was fastest time from point to point. So they would ride in the rain, but they had their own mechanics. At the end of that stage, those bikes are clean. Sometimes bottom brackets overhauled. Because a lot of times for time trialing, even back in the day of Anquetil and Merckx and them, these guys would literally, the day before a time trial, to overhaul the bottom bracket, put light oil in the bearing to give these guys, frictionless stuff. But then after the time trial, they go back and put regular grease in there. Well, if you got your own mechanic, you can do that. I'm just saying that because the reason they don't use mud guards is because after every stage, somebody's cleaning the bikes. Because if you don't clean the bike, that grinding from the sand that you hear will chew out your components. And it's not fun riding a grinding chain. You can hear it, So no. So yeah, I started riding in the rain because when competing, you have to learn how to, you race in the rain sometimes. If you've already signed up for a race and you spend your money, just because it's raining, you wouldn't go. But a lot of riders would quit. They would show up, it's raining, they wouldn't start the race. So you have smaller fields in the races, So yeah, a lot of people don't like riding in the rain. And which is why I like it. That's why Robert Tegler says, hi, on Tuesday he said, hello to those who smile when others are frowning. Those of you who don't know, I'll leave that alone because he knows what I mean. All right, but yeah, let's see here. Shani says she loves the trainer. I got a great deal. Wahoo. Yeah, I'm here to make good trainers. Russell says, I did an 80-mile gravel ride north of Denton, Texas. I know that area really well. I had a sister that went to the Women's University north of Denton there. In light rain, cold, and big fun. Yeah. Denton's got some good riding out there. Simonson 77. Have you had a chance to use the glove that Chris Horner recommended? Oh yeah, I had that thing on a ride. I filmed it. Where you been, man? The ones with the mitten flap that folds over the fingers. They passed the test. I did not do a review on them. I just kind of, wanted to see how they worked out. In fact, I used them this week. I went out on a ride. We've had unusual weather here where one day it's cold, like 37, and the day before it was like 60 something Fahrenheit, just hot, cold. So yes, the little flap folds under the wrist. And I have it, I think 2 weeks ago, or was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, check the group rides. And I talked about it, I showed it. It works really well because I like the fact that you can pull that out to block the wind and to keep the rain because that's rain proof, that flap that's in there. And it worked all the way. I had it and I used liners with it. And I did not lose my dexterity. That was the big thing. So I was able to use liners and go down to like probably 4°C or 3 Celsius, which is about 34, pretty close to freezing weather, and they were comfortable. We did a ride where I was filming frost on the grass, and I had those gloves with liners on. You definitely need them below 10°C. You need to put some liners in there. But they're designed for cool weather from 10°C to maybe 20°C, regular. And then if it rains, you can pull that out to keep like a raincoat with, and it's crabbed. It's like a lobster claw. So it's like this, but you don't lose the dexterity. You can still use your fingers, and I really like that because it's soft, flat, but it has a liner in there that's breathable, but it's clear that it keeps moisture out. So no, it's a good glove. I got it because of how he talked about it. He said, I have these other gloves. They're very warm. They were made by ASOS. And then he showed the Pro logo and he said, but I use this the most. So the flexibility and the range that they covered. The one by ASOS were too warm, he said, for most riding. Especially since he's retired now. He said, I'm not going to go out in 10-degree Fahrenheit weather. There's no reason to. And with where he is, there's no group rides allowed right now. So he's just doing a lot of solo stuff. So it was kind of good. So I tried it. I liked it. They were hard to find. And I got a pair from some Italian company. And it worked pretty well. Yeah, they're really good. They're good to try if you can find a pair. All right, let's see here. Cycle says, ditto on having a clean chain. Sometimes I'm riding and I'll see someone's filthy chain and just shake my head. Yeah, everything you see on the chain is a dirt magnet. Because as I've said before, the lube is on the pins that are inside the chain. That's what matters. When you drop the lube on that link, it should disappear, especially if it's a light lube. Everything else should be wiped off. You don't need anything on top of those rollers. is the pins you're lubing so that the rollers can roll over them. So anything you see just collects dirt from the road, the same dirt that gets on you. That's why when I get home, before I put anything up, I wipe my shoes and all of that before I put them up, because you get grit and dust from the road. So yeah, you keep your chain clean, keep your dry. They will last a long time. So it's just worth it. All right, Edgar, one of our newest channel members, he says, I use a smart trainer and training software because it forces me to work harder than I would outdoors by myself. That's fine. I mean, whatever. And then, and the good thing is that if you have training software, it probably helps you focus. But be careful with the software. Make sure that you have done your own testing to identify your zones so that you're not doing too much work when you should be taking it easy. Let's see here. All right. Cycle. Okay, so Cycle's referring to my comment about the gentleman that said Iberia sells a cheap utility center. Cycle says that's why I use the word cost effective. Yeah, because cheap, yeah, is relative. It's almost like expensive. That's another relative term. I don't like to use those words because it's like a personal decision. So I like to say shop because Psycho and I can look at something and he decides, you know what, that's not for me. And it's not. He could have all the money in the world, but why buy something you don't need? That's what I'm getting at. You can have all the money in the world. You don't want to hoard. So if you don't need it, you don't feel like you can put it to use, no point buying it. But when you are going to buy it, like the gentleman asked about those gloves, and I said, Chris said the Assos gloves were too warm. The other gloves he used a lot more. The reason I decided to try that was I was looking for a glove that would cover a wider temperature range in the area where we are. And in the winter, we get most of our rains here. Every now and then, hurricane seasons, whatever, we get some rain in the summer, but most of the time in the winter. So I wanted something that would handle cold and keep my hands dry. And then, ting, okay, let me check that out. So that's the way, because you want to get things you can use. If you're not going to use it, then send it back. Keep the receipt, send it back. There's no point to it. Save the money, get something else. But get something that's going to work and it's going to last so you get value out of your dollars. Don't get something that's going to break easily. Then you feel like you got ripped off. I don't care how inexpensive it is. Even if it were free. Who wants a free trainer that causes you to crash when you put your bike on it? You put it on there and then the axle breaks or something. Who wants that? They can keep it. Make stuff that works. Otherwise, don't bother. Because it doesn't have to be expensive for it to be good. Meaning that they could use maybe heavier steel or whatever, which is cheaper or less expensive to source. And so the trainer is less expensive. Then they could use the fancier alloy on the higher price ones. And those who want to buy lighter or fancier still can get those. But it doesn't mean that the person who's spending less to get the one made out of steel mean that it won't work. So they can still keep the cost down, but make it last. That's what I mean. It's kind of like, in fact, I don't want to use cars as an example because the more expensive cars can be a royal pain. They're always in the shop. They got all kinds of issues. So I don't want to use that as an example. But just keep in mind that when you're going to buy anything, especially cycling stuff, read the reviews, go on Google, find out who has used this. Don't take it from the marketing stuff. Make sure you get good recommendations so that your cycling dollars can stretch. Let's see here. Rex says, I got some La Pasión deep winter bad boy. It feels very warm below 30. Yeah, I don't ride very frequently below 30. That's just too cold. It gets to where you're trying to you have to cover your face and all of that depending on the direction of the wind. Most of our rides, I think the coldest ride this winter has been in the morning. It was about 29 Fahrenheit and it warmed up quickly. It didn't stay cold the whole time. I mean, we have stuff we can wear, but it's not as much fun. You're so bundled up. So Buyuk Ankara, he says, what is the GPS program you use? I'm not sure what he means by that. What GPS program? I don't use any GPS program. I guess you mean my cyclo computer. It's just a Garmin. Yeah, I guess you mean a computer. I use a Garmin head unit. I have the 1000 or something. They've got different kind. I got the 520 or 8 something. Yeah, that's just something that helped me. I like it because I can map out routes. Sometimes I used to do that when we're learning the area we're right in, and it's good to have. Let's see here. Brian Sketch, he says, thank you in advance. I've been rolling with the same removable mud guards as you, but have been getting soaked from the front tire stream that shoots out in front. I don't know how you have yours attached. I don't get any stream because I've got there's a little flap in the front because you have to mount the mud guards on the fork, and it gets within a centimeter of the crown behind the fork, basically, and it should go all the way down to where that flap keeps the spray off your feet. Now, are you covering your shoes? Are you wearing shoe covers? Because if you don't, then part of it is the splatter. When you go through a lot of standing water, it's going to splatter, but it does not spray my feet. So no, I'm not getting that. I'd have to see your setup. I don't get anything on there. You cover your feet mainly for the rain, because the rain gets on you and then it gets on your leg and drips into your shoe covers. So a lot of times it's not the shoe covers that causing you to get wet. So you got to get something to seal the top of that shoe cover so the water does not get in there. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Get ready for the ride tomorrow. Get your K's in. Stay safe. And we'll be in touch. We're going to get some clips for you all. And we're going to be doing our usual stuff. It's going to be overcast as usual. So I got to go find a kit that will stand out tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and sign out now. You guys stay safe out there.